He had no obligation to help, no reason to care. And yet, that rainy night when the sirens screamed louder than the thunder, Daniel stood in the middle of the street with two little girls clinging to his soaked coat, holding on like he was the only anchor they had left in a world that had just collapsed. He wasn't their father, not even their stepdad anymore. But in that moment, he was the only one who showed up. Emma, his ex-wife, had begged him on the phone. She hadn't spoken to him in months, maybe years. Her voice cracked between sobs. Her car had crashed, her new husband arrested, and the girls, Ava and Mia, were alone, terrified, abandoned in a motel on the bad side of town. Daniel didn't hesitate. He left his shift early, drove through the storm like a madman, and found them shivering, staring at the door, hoping someone, anyone, would come. He didn't think about the past. He didn't ask why it had come to this. He just bent down, opened his arms, and whispered, "You're safe now." They didn't know then that this man, who slept on a couch and worked 2 jobs just to survive, would shape every ounce of strength they'd one day use to build an empire. All they knew was that his hug felt like home. Those early years were brutal. Emma had checked into rehab and vanished for almost 2 years. Daniel had no legal right to the girls, but he fought anyway. In courtrooms where lawyers rolled their eyes at a man fighting for kids that weren't his, he stood tall. "They're my daughters," he said firmly. "I don't need blood to prove that." Ava was 6 and didn't speak for 3 months. Mia had night terrors so violent. Daniel started sleeping on the floor beside her bed just to hold her hand through them. He worked nights, picked them up from school in the afternoons, cooked instant noodles with peanut butter when money ran out, and learned how to braid hair off YouTube tutorials just so they'd smile before class. People whispered, said he was crazy, said he should have started over, found someone new, had his own kids. But Daniel didn't care what anyone thought. His loyalty wasn't performative. It was real, raw, and silent. Like the way he fixed Ava's broken science project at 2 a.m. or stood in line at thrift stores every weekend just to find a dress Mia could wear to her recital. There were nights he broke, nights when the house was too quiet, and bills sat on the counter unopened. He'd sit on the porch in the dark, hands in his face, wondering if love alone was enough to raise children. But every time he considered giving up, a little hand would touch his arm. "We love you, Daniel," Mia would whisper, and that was all he needed. Years passed. The girls healed in his love. Ava became fearless, sharp-tongued, brilliant. Mia turned her pain into poetry, and then into strategy. They grew up watching him sacrifice everything. And when college applications rolled in, Daniel had no savings left. So he sold his truck, took on 3 jobs, told them, "Dream big, I'll find a way." He did. They got scholarships, part-time jobs, internships. But every decision they made was rooted in what Daniel had taught them. Show up, no matter how tired, no matter how small you feel. Show up for the people you love. By the time they were 25, Ava and Mia had already launched a tech startup aimed at empowering women entrepreneurs across the country. By 28, they were on Forbes 30 Under 30. And by 30, they were on the cover of Time magazine, standing side by side. Their company valued at over $3 billion. Journalists asked them about their inspiration. "Was it your mother?" one asked, awkwardly. Ava smiled. "No. Our mom gave birth to us. But our father, Daniel, he gave us life." Daniel never chased the spotlight. When people asked him how he felt about their success, he just chuckled, wiping his hands on his old jeans, and said, "They've always been stars. I just made sure they had a sky to shine in." At their first global conference, Ava and Mia took the stage in front of thousands of ambitious young women. Cameras flashed. The world watched. But their eyes searched the crowd for one man. He was standing in the back, in his thrifted suit, nervously twisting his old watch band. He didn't want to come up. Didn't want attention. But Ava raised her hand and said, Before we talk numbers, we want to introduce the reason we're here. And Mia took the mic, her voice trembling. Most people know us as CEOs, but before we were anything, we were just two broken girls rescued by a man who didn't have to love us but did anyway. The spotlight turned. Daniel froze. 1,000 people stood, applauding, cheering, crying. He walked to the stage, overwhelmed, unsure. But when he got there, Ava hugged him first, then Mia. And in front of the whole world, they handed him a plaque that read, "To Daniel, our forever hero." But for him, the greatest reward wasn't money, fame, or applause. It was knowing that when no one else stood by them, he did. And even now, in their billion-dollar empire, they still call every Sunday, still ask for his advice, still say, "I love you," before hanging up. Because heroes don't always wear capes. Sometimes they wear secondhand shoes, carry too many groceries, and love harder than anyone expects them to. And Daniel, he's still that hero. Every single day. The news hit like a lightning strike. Daniel's phone buzzed relentlessly. Texts, calls, notifications flooding in from every corner of his life. The headline stared back at him on every screen. Ex-stepfather's unseen role behind female-led tech giants' rise. People were shocked, some confused, some angry. How could the man they barely knew suddenly be the hero of a billion-dollar empire? Daniel sat frozen on his creaky kitchen chair, coffee long gone cold beside him. The old wallpaper peeled quietly. Behind him, a reminder of the life he still lived, miles away from Forbes covers and shiny conference halls. His hands trembled slightly, not from pride, but from the sudden surge of attention he never wanted. His phone rang again. This time it was Emma. "Daniel, did you see it? The story?" Her voice was hesitant, cautious, like she wasn't sure if this moment was a blessing or a curse. Daniel took a deep breath. "Yeah, I saw it. Everyone did." But he knew what really mattered wasn't what the world thought. It was what Ava and Mia thought. The girls who had called him dad when no one else would. The girls who still sent him memes at midnight asking for advice about life and love and business. He glanced at the photo on his fridge. A faded snapshot of the three of them at the beach, sunburned and laughing. The world only saw CEOs and headlines. He saw scraped knees, late-night fears, and whispered promises to never give up. Outside, a neighbor passed by, glancing curiously through the window. Rumors were already spreading in the small town. "That's Daniel, the guy who raised the billion-dollar sisters." Some eyes were full of respect. Others, skepticism. Daniel's mind raced. Was this his chance to finally let go of the past? Or was this just the start of a new battle? The battle to prove that love, sacrifice, and resilience mattered more than the brand names or bank accounts. He picked up the phone and dialed Ava. The line clicked. "Hey, Dad." Her voice was light but tired. "You okay?" Daniel smiled, weakly. "I'm trying." "Don't let it get to you," Mia chimed in, joining the call. "We always knew who you were. That's all that matters." The moment Daniel saw the headline, his heart skipped, then thudded painfully against his ribs. He saved his ex-wife's daughters. Today, they're the CEOs of the world's most powerful female-led company, and he's still their hero. Words glowed harshly on his cracked phone screen, blinding in their intensity. His hands, calloused from years of hard work, trembled slightly as he scrolled through comments flooding in from strangers and friends alike. The kitchen was cold, shadows creeping along the faded walls. The old clock ticked loudly in the silence, counting. Seconds that felt heavier than any moment Daniel had ever faced. The same kitchen where he had patched up scraped knees, whispered late-night reassurances, and watched the girls grow from scared little souls into fierce, determined women. Now it was a stage spotlight he never wanted. A sudden flood of texts buzzed. Congratulations, questions, some even skeptical. Who is this guy, the forgotten stepdad or the real MVP? Why didn't we hear about him before? The chatter was deafening. Yet none of it mattered as much as Emma's call, ringing sharply through the noise. Daniel? Did you see it? Her voice cracked, betraying the calm she tried to keep. There was a fragility beneath the surface, an echo of the old pain Daniel thought he'd buried. I did. His voice was rough, coated in exhaustion. Everyone did. He stared at the peeling wallpaper, the faded edges matching the weariness in his soul. The world was suddenly watching, but Daniel felt exposed, vulnerable. For years, he'd been the silent guardian, the shadow behind the spotlight. Now, the spotlight was on him, and he wasn't sure he wanted to stand in it. Ava's name lit up the screen next. Hey, Dad, you okay? Her voice, warm yet tired, reached across miles. Daniel swallowed hard, the lump in his throat growing. I'm trying, he whispered, voice breaking with a mix of pride and disbelief. Mia joined. The call, her calm steadiness grounding him. We always knew who you were, Daniel. That's what counts. His gaze drifted to the photo taped to the fridge. A sun-bleached moment of laughter and innocence, a stark contrast to the whirlwind outside. People outside their small town had started to whisper, eyes narrowing or softening with surprise and judgment. Is he really the man behind the girls? Some voices admired, others doubted. Daniel felt the weight of years pressing down. Nights spent working multiple jobs, the fear in their eyes, the silence after Emma disappeared. He hadn't just raised Ava and Mia. He'd fought tooth and nail to keep them safe when no one else would. The phone slipped from his hand. His breath hitched as a wave of memories crashed over him. Mia's trembling hands in the dark. Ava's silence after that terrible accident. The countless sacrifices no one ever saw. He closed his eyes tightly, trying to steady the storm inside. The world saw CEOs, success, power. He saw two little girls who needed him more than anything. Outside, life went on. Neighbors cast curious glances, whispers trailing behind closed doors. Daniel knew this was only the beginning. The surface was calm, but beneath it, a tempest brewed. He picked up the phone again, dialing Ava once more. Her voice greeted him like a lifeline. Don't let them get to you, Dad. You're our rock. Daniel nodded, wiping a tear he didn't expect to fall. Thanks, girls, for everything. The rain hadn't stopped all night, just like that. Night years ago, the night everything changed. Daniel's mind drifted back, unbidden but vivid. He could still feel the icy grip of fear squeezing his chest when Emma called, voice trembling, begging for help. Daniel, please. The girls. They need you. He remembered gripping the steering wheel, knuckles white, the highway blurring under the storm's fury. Every second felt like a lifetime, He replayed the image of the motel room door, cracked open just enough to see two pairs of frightened eyes staring at him, their fragile hope barely holding on. Why me? His mind had screamed back then, but the answer was always the same. Because they needed someone. Because love wasn't about blood. It was about presence. He thought of the first night after that rescue, the silence so thick in the little apartment that even the hum of the fridge sounded deafening. Ava curled up in the corner, arms wrapped tight around herself, refusing to speak. Mia's trembling breath echoed in the darkness as Daniel sat awake, too scared to close his eyes, afraid the nightmare would return if he did. I'm supposed to be their hero, he had told himself, though the weight of the responsibility crushed him. How do you fix broken kids with broken hearts? Days melted into weeks. Daniel's world shrank to scraped knees, forgotten meals, and whispered lullabies in the dead of night. Every smile he coaxed from them was a small victory. Every tear he caught was a wound he carried alone. He replayed the fights with Emma in his head, angry words, bitter accusations, the silence that followed like a gaping wound. She had her demons, he had his limits. But the girls, they were his reason to keep breathing. Was I enough? The question haunted him in every quiet moment. When bills piled up and exhaustion swallowed him whole, when hope seemed like a distant star he couldn't reach. And yet in the chaos, there were moments of pure light. Ava's first laugh after months of silence. Mia's hand slipping into his as she finally trusted enough to sleep through the night. Those moments whispered the truth he needed. Love isn't perfect, but it's relentless. He remembered late nights poring over college applications, trying to figure out how to pay tuition with empty pockets. The pride in their eyes when they earned scholarships, their determination forged in the furnace of hardship. They're stronger than I ever imagined, he thought, voice breaking inside. And maybe I gave them something worth more than money. I gave them myself. As the storm outside raged on, Daniel's heart clenched with a fierce mixture of pain and pride. The surface might look calm to the world now, but beneath, the scars and victories of those years shaped every breath he took. Daniel's breath hitched sharply, chest tightening as memories crashed through him like waves in a storm. His hands, usually steady and strong, began to tremble uncontrollably. He gripped the edge of the worn kitchen table, knuckles blanching white, trying desperately to anchor himself to the moment. A sudden sting welled in his eyes, the kind that sneaks up, unannounced, and before he could stop it, a tear slipped down his cheek. One, then another. He blinked furiously, swallowing hard, but the dam broke. The tears spilled freely now, silent and hot, tracing paths down his weathered face. For a long moment, Daniel let himself feel the ache he'd buried for so long, the exhaustion, the fear, the weight of every sleepless night spent fighting to keep the girls safe. His body shook with quiet sobs, the years of pain unspooling in that solitary kitchen. But the world outside wasn't kind to men who showed weakness. He wiped his face roughly with the back of his hand, trying to erase the evidence. His lips curled into a tight practiced smile, one he wore like armor whenever anyone called or walked through the door. The smile that said, "I'm okay. Everything's fine." He caught his reflection in the cracked window pane, the tired eyes, the trembling hands, the faint trace of tears still glistening on his skin. He forced himself to hold that smile a little longer, to stand tall, even when inside he felt like falling apart. The phone buzzed again. Another message from Ava. "You're our hero, Dad. Don't forget that." Daniel's throat tightened. He nodded to himself, swallowing the lump. The tears had to wait. The fight wasn't over. Even as Daniel forced himself to steady his shaking hands, a shadow lingered deep in his mind, a secret he'd carried alone all these years. The world saw the hero who saved Ava and Mia, but no one knew the price he paid or the dangers that still lurked in the past. Late at night, when the house was silent, his thoughts drifted to that one phone call, an unknown number that appeared just weeks before the company's rise. The voice on the other end was cold, clipped, and full of warning. Stay away. Some truths are better left buried. Daniel had hung up, heart pounding like a drum, but the message stayed with him like a poison. Who was watching? Who wanted the past to stay buried? And why? He glanced around the dim room, eyes darting nervously. Even after all these years, the feeling of being watched gnawed at him. Shadows seemed to flicker at the edge of vision, whispers, caught in the wind outside. Was someone trying to undo everything Ava and Mia had built? Or was it something more personal? An enemy he never saw coming, hiding in plain sight. Daniel's grip tightened on the phone as another message lit the screen, this time just a cryptic text. Don't trust anyone, not even those closest. The question echoed in his mind. How far would he go to protect the girls? Would the price of their success become his undoing? The calm surface of his life was cracking, and beneath, a storm was gathering, one that could destroy everything he fought for. And Daniel knew one thing with terrifying certainty. The past was not done with him yet. A few days after the cryptic warning, Daniel found a plain, unmarked envelope slipped under his door. His name was scrawled in shaky handwriting on the front. No return address, no explanation. His fingers trembled as he pulled out the single sheet of paper inside. It was a photo, grainy, almost faded, of a young Ava and Mia standing outside. A small rundown building he recognized instantly, the old community center where they had spent so many difficult afternoons. But something was wrong. In the background, barely visible, was a shadowy figure watching them from a cracked window. The face was obscured, but the posture was familiar. Daniel's heart sank. Alongside the photo was a note, typed neatly but coldly. "You left too much behind. They're not as safe as you think." The message hit like a punch to the gut. Someone was digging into their past. Someone who knew secrets Daniel thought were long buried. His mind raced. Who could have sent this? What were they after? And what did it mean for Ava and Mia's future? Daniel stared at the photo, his fingers clutching the edges like a lifeline. That shadowy figure wasn't just a stranger lurking in the background. It was a ghost from his past, one he thought he'd escaped forever. The memory hit him like a punch. Late nights spent watching over the community center, uneasy conversations, in hushed tones, and promises made in desperation. Who was watching the girls back then? The question echoed relentlessly in his mind. Had someone been tracking them all along? The thought gnawed at him, twisting his stomach into knots. His breath hitched as the room seemed to close in around him. The weight of years, sacrifices, and secrets pressed down like a stone. Daniel realized this wasn't just about protecting Ava and Mia anymore. It was about confronting a past he had buried deep, a past that was now clawing its way back to the surface. He sank into the worn chair, eyes fixed on the photo, and whispered, "I won't let them hurt you, not again." Days later, Daniel's phone buzzed again. This time it wasn't a threat or warning, it was a single text from an unknown number. "Look closer at what you think you lost." Confused and on edge, Daniel glanced around his small apartment. The walls suddenly felt thinner, the shadows deeper. He pulled up an old photo album, the one he kept tucked away in the back of a dusty closet. Flipping through faded pictures, his breath caught at one in particular. A snapshot of Ava, Mia, and Emma smiling brightly outside the community center. But this time something new stood out. A small, barely noticeable symbol etched onto the building's brick wall behind them, a symbol he hadn't seen before. His mind raced. That symbol wasn't random. It was a mark, one connected to a secret network from years ago, something he'd only heard whispers about, something dangerous. A chill ran down his spine. The past wasn't just watching, they were sending messages. And Daniel knew that if he didn't unravel what the symbol meant soon, everything he loved could be lost forever. He tapped the number back, fingers hesitating. "Who are you? What do you want from us?" No reply, only silence. Now, what no one expected was how the past would reach out, not with anger or threats, but with a shocking revelation that would change everything. One rainy afternoon, Daniel's phone rang. The caller ID was unfamiliar, but something about the voice on the other end stopped him cold. "Daniel," she said softly. "It's Emma." His heart jolted. Emma, the woman he hadn't spoken to in years, whose silence had left wounds deeper than any words could heal. "I'm sorry I disappeared," she whispered. "There are things you need to know. Things I never told you about the girls, about what really happened back then." Daniel's breath caught, a storm of emotions crashing inside him. Hope, fear, anger. "Tell me," he demanded, his voice trembling. Emma's voice dropped to a fragile whisper. The community center wasn't just a safe place. It was a front. And someone's been watching, waiting, manipulating everything from the shadows, including us. Daniel's mind reeled. The quiet hero of the story suddenly realized he was just a piece in a much larger game, a game where the stakes were far higher than he'd ever imagined. And this time, the danger wasn't just for Ava and Mia. It was for all of them. Daniel's hands shook as he clutched the phone, Emma's words echoing like thunder in his mind. Affront? Manipulation? The pieces of the puzzle that never fit were suddenly screaming at him. Who? Who's behind this? He demanded, voice sharp but laced with desperation. Emma hesitated, then whispered, Someone you trusted. Someone close to all of us. They've been pulling strings for years. Using the girls. Using me. Using you. The world tilted. Daniel's breath caught, a cold sweat breaking out across his forehead. He thought of the people who had circled. Their lives, the friendly faces, the silent watchers. Could any of them be the enemy? Why now? Why after all this time? Daniel's voice cracked. Emma's reply was chilling. Because Ava and Mia aren't just CEOs. They're the key to something much bigger. A legacy they never asked for. The line went dead before Daniel could ask more. He was left staring. At the blank screen, the silence heavier than any words. Daniel realized the fight for his daughter's future wasn't just about protection anymore. It was about survival. Daniel paced the dimly lit room, mind racing with every possible scenario. The weight of Emma's revelation pressed down on him, sharper than any blade. He knew he couldn't face this alone, not with enemies hiding in shadows and secrets threatening to unravel everything. He pulled out his phone, scrolling through contacts before stopping at a name he hadn't called in years. Lucas. Reliable, resourceful, someone who owed him a favor. If anyone could help dig up the truth, it was Lucas. But Daniel also knew the danger wasn't just outside his door. It was inside it. Trust was a fragile thing now, and every smile could hide a dagger. He needed a plan, a way to protect Ava and Mia without tipping off whoever was watching. As night fell, Daniel sat at the kitchen table, surrounded by old photos, files, and scraps of forgotten memories. The past and present collided in a chaotic storm inside him. One thing was clear. The fight to save his daughters wasn't just about family anymore. It was about exposing a dark secret, breaking the chains of the past, and confronting an enemy who wouldn't stop, no matter the cost. Daniel sat quietly in the shadows, staring at the scattered photos of Ava and Mia. Each picture was a reminder of what he had fought for and what he might lose. His mind raced with memories of their laughter, their tears, and the promises he'd made to keep them safe. How did it come to this? The question echoed relentlessly. Who betrayed us? And how deep does this go? His heart pounded, not just from fear, but from a fierce determination. Daniel wasn't just a father anymore. He was a man standing on the edge of a war he hadn't expected, but couldn't back away from. Across town, Lucas sat alone in his cluttered apartment, phone in hand. He thought about Daniel's call, about the years since they last spoke. Years filled with silence and distance. But beneath that silence was loyalty, and a debt that couldn't be ignored. This isn't just about old favors, Lucas thought. It's about the truth. About stopping whatever is coming before it's too late. He knew the risk, but also the cost of doing nothing. Both men, separated by miles but united by purpose, felt the weight of what lay ahead. The past was a ghost stalking their every move, and the future was a battlefield waiting to erupt. Daniel and Lucas met under the cover of night in a quiet, forgotten cafe, one of the few places still untouched by the shadows creeping into their lives. The air was thick with unspoken fears and the weight of secrets. Lucas slid a worn folder across the table. Inside were documents, faded photos, and coded messages, fragments of a puzzle that painted a terrifying picture. A network of power, manipulation, and danger that reached far beyond anything Daniel had imagined. Look here, Lucas whispered, pointing to a name that sent a chill down Daniel's spine, someone they both thought was an ally. Someone who had been close to Ava, Mia, and Emma all along. Daniel's fingers trembled as he traced the lines on the papers. The truth was darker than he expected, a conspiracy rooted in the very community he'd fought to protect, with ties to the powerful female-led empire his daughters now ran. "This isn't just about business," Daniel murmured. "It's about control. About rewriting history." Lucas nodded grimly. "And if we don't act fast, they'll erase everything the girls have built, including their lives." The room seemed to close in around them, the stakes higher than ever. Daniel's jaw clenched. The fight wasn't just for survival anymore. It was for justice, for family, and for the future of the company that symbolized everything they had sacrificed for. With one last look at the folder, Daniel stood up, voice steady but fierce. "We expose them, no matter what it takes." As Daniel closed the folder, a cold wave of realization crashed over him. This wasn't just a battle for business or secrets. It was a fight for Ava and Mia's very souls. He thought back to all the nights he stayed awake, protecting those girls when the world turned its back. Now, the threat wasn't just from outside. It was from those who wore smiles and hid knives behind their backs. His hands clenched into fists, knuckles white with anger and pain. "They're trying to destroy everything I gave my life for." But in that moment of despair, a fierce fire ignited inside him, a vow that no shadow, no betrayal, no force could ever break the bond they shared. Daniel's voice was low but resolute, as he whispered into the darkness, "I won't let anyone take them away. Not now. Not ever." The next morning, Daniel's phone buzzed again. This time, it wasn't a message or a warning. It was a live video feed. On the screen, Ava and Mia stood inside their company's headquarters, surrounded by stunned employees. But something was wrong. Their confident smiles were strained, eyes flickering with confusion and fear. Then, a voice cut through the silence, cold and unmistakable. "This company, this legacy you cherish, is built on lies." Suddenly, the feed cut to black. Daniel's heart slammed against his ribs. Someone had hacked into their most sacred space, sending a message not just to the CEOs, but to everyone who believed in their dream. The line between past and present shattered in an instant. No more hiding. No more running. It was time to fight. Not just for the company, but for the truth that could either save them or destroy everything. Daniel's jaw tightened. This was the turning point. The moment he crossed from protector into warrior, he whispered fiercely, "I'm coming for you." Daniel's goal was no longer just to protect Ava and Mia from shadowy threats. It was to uncover the truth buried beneath years of lies, betrayal, and silence. He vowed to expose the puppeteers who manipulated their lives and the company, to shatter the web of deceit threatening to destroy everything the girls had built with blood, sweat, and tears. More than that, Daniel wanted to reclaim their future, one where Ava and Mia could lead fearlessly, free from the ghosts of the past. Every step, every risk, every sleepless night was driven by that burning purpose, to turn the legacy of pain into a legacy of power. Daniel stood alone in the quiet of his old living room, the weight of everything crashing down like a tidal wave. The folder lay open on the table, filled with names, secrets, and betrayals he never wanted to believe. His hands trembled as memories flooded back. The sacrifices, the fights, the nights spent holding Ava and Mia close, promising he'd keep them safe. But now, the biggest threat wasn't just outside. It was someone from their own circle. Someone who had used their trust to break them. A sudden sting prickled behind his eyes. The realization hit hard. Protection wasn't enough. He had to face the painful truth that the people they loved could also be the ones who hurt them the most. Tears welled up, but Daniel swallowed them down, forcing himself to stand tall. "This isn't just a battle. he whispered to the empty room. It's a war for their future, and I'm ready to fight, even if it means losing everything. The weight of betrayal pressed down like a crushing wave. Daniel sank onto the worn-out couch, his breath ragged, body trembling with the force of emotions he had fought to suppress for so long. Memories of Ava and Mia's innocent smiles flashed before his eyes, now tangled with images of lies and shadows creeping into their lives. His hands clenched into fists, nails digging into his palms as the overwhelming pain broke through. A heavy sigh escaped his lips, and for the first time in years, Daniel let the tears fall. Silent, relentless, a storm he couldn't hold back. I'm supposed to be their hero, he whispered brokenly, voice cracking under the weight of doubt. But what if I'm not strong enough? What if I fail them? The silence in the room was suffocating, wrapping around him like a cold shroud. Yet beneath the collapse, a flicker of something fierce and unyielding remained, because even in his darkest moment, Daniel's love for his daughters refused to fade. Just as the weight of despair threatened to consume him, Daniel's phone buzzed softly on the table. A message from Ava. Dad, we believe in you. We need you now more than ever. That simple line cut through the darkness like a beacon of light. The love and faith of his daughters were a lifeline, pulling him back from the edge. At that moment, a knock came at the door. Lucas stepped inside, eyes steady and unwavering. You're not alone in this, Daniel. We'll fight together, every step of the way. Hope flickered in the room, fragile but real. Daniel wiped his tears and straightened up. The battle was far from over, but with Ava, Mia, and Lucas by his side, there was a chance to turn the tide. He whispered, voice firm, let's finish this. For them. Daniel looked at the faces of Ava and Mia in the photos on the wall, feeling the weight of anger and betrayal threaten to consume him. But then, something inside shifted, a quiet voice urging him to rise above the bitterness. He remembered the sacrifices, the struggles, and the love that bound them all together. Revenge might destroy their enemies, but it could also shatter the fragile future they were trying to build. Instead, Daniel chose compassion, not because it was easy, but because it was stronger. He reached out to Emma, despite the wounds she'd caused, seeking the truth, not vengeance. He wanted to understand the why behind the betrayal, to heal the cracks before they broke them apart. In that moment, Daniel became more than a protector. He became a bridge, a man ready to fight for justice with a heart open to forgiveness. Daniel's mission evolved. No longer driven by anger or retaliation, he sought healing, for himself, for Ava and Mia, and even for those who had caused the fractures in their lives. He understood that true strength wasn't in tearing down enemies, but in rebuilding bridges, mending wounds that years of pain had carved deep. His goal became clear: to create a future where love, trust, and understanding were the foundation of their family and company. Every decision, every risk, was guided by the hope that forgiveness could break the cycle of betrayal, transforming old wounds into new beginnings. Just when Daniel thought he had uncovered all the pieces, a new revelation hit like a thunderclap. Late one night, Ava received an anonymous envelope with a single cryptic letter and an old photograph, one she had never seen before. The photo showed Emma standing beside a man nobody in the family had ever mentioned, a man with a shadowed face, holding a file stamped with the company's logo. The letter's words were chilling. The real enemy isn't who you think it is. Look closer. The past hides a secret that will change everything. Daniel's hands shook as Ava called him, voice trembling with disbelief. Dad, there's something we never knew. Something that changes everything about Emma and about us. In that moment, the fragile trust they'd started to rebuild shattered. The foundation of their family and their future was now uncertain, buried beneath a secret far darker than betrayal. Daniel's mind raced, heart pounding with the terror and hope of what lay ahead. After the shock of the hidden truth, Daniel knew they needed a sanctuary, a place untouched by betrayal and danger, where Ava, Mia, and Emma could regroup and breathe. He arranged for them to stay at a secluded family cabin, far from the prying eyes and whispers of the city. The moment they arrived, the walls seemed to absorb their fears, replacing them with quiet strength. In that refuge, Daniel sat with his daughters late into the night, listening without judgment as they voiced their pain, doubts, and hopes. "This place," he said softly, "is ours. No lies can reach us here. No one can break what we build together." The atmosphere shifted. The tension eased as trust began to grow anew. For the first time in months, they felt safe, not just physically, but emotionally. As tension simmered in the cabin, Daniel noticed Emma sitting apart, her eyes filled with regret and pain. The betrayal weighed heavily on her, but beneath it all was a desperate need for forgiveness. Instead of anger, Daniel chose a different path. He walked over quietly, sitting beside her, his voice gentle but firm. "Emma, I see the weight you carry. We're not here to condemn, but to understand." The room fell silent. Ava and Mia watched, surprise softening their guarded expressions. Emma's shoulders trembled as tears spilled, not from weakness, but from relief. The relief of being seen and accepted despite her mistakes. In that moment, the power shifted. Judgment lost its grip, replaced by a bridge built on kindness and vulnerability. Daniel's choice sparked a new energy in the family, one where healing began not through blame, but through compassion. Daniel paced the quiet cabin, the night thick around him like the weight on his conscience. The lines between right and wrong blurred as he faced a choice no father or leader should ever have to make. Could he protect Ava, Mia, and Emma without compromising the very principles that defined him? Was there room for mercy when the enemy lurked so close, threatening to tear them apart? His mind was a battlefield of doubt and determination. The urge for justice warred against the call for forgiveness, each pulling him toward a different path. Single mistake could cost everything: their family, their legacy, their future. Yet deep inside, Daniel knew the hardest battles were fought not with fists, but with the courage to do what's right, even when the heart screamed otherwise. Daniel's goal was crystal clear, but more complicated than ever: uncover the truth behind the betrayal. While protecting the family he loved fiercely, every step was laced with suspense. Who could be trusted? Which hidden enemy was ready to strike next? The clock was ticking, and the shadows closed in tighter. But beneath the tension, an emotional storm raged. Daniel wasn't just fighting for a company or reputation. He was fighting for Ava, Mia, and Emma's future, for the chance to heal wounds no one else could see. With every revelation, the stakes climbed higher. With every choice, Daniel risked everything: his heart, his family, and his own soul. After nights of endless tension and unspoken words, Daniel finally sat across from Emma, the air thick with everything left unsaid. "I don't want this war to destroy us," he said quietly, eyes searching hers for a flicker of hope. "We've been through too much to let anger rule our future." Emma's gaze softened, the walls she built beginning to crumble. Daniel extended his hand, not just as a gesture, but as a promise, a chance to rebuild, to heal, and to move forward together. For their sake, for ours, I'm ready to find peace. Are you? As Daniel sat quietly in the cabin's dim light, his mind drifted back to a time before the chaos, a memory etched deeply in his heart. He saw Ava and Mia as little girls, their laughter filling the sunlit backyard, chasing butterflies with innocent joy. Emma watched them fondly, her smile warm and genuine. Then the memory shifted. Those first cracks in the perfect picture. The whispered arguments behind closed doors, the silence that grew heavier with every passing day. Daniel's chest tightened, remembering the night he promised to protect them no matter what, his voice steady despite the fear gnawing inside. Daniel's heart felt heavy, caught between love and betrayal. Forgiving Emma wasn't just about letting go. It meant reopening wounds he thought had begun to heal. Ava and Mia sat across from him, their faces shadowed by doubt and hurt. Each of them carried their own battles, trust shattered, questions unanswered. Can we really move past this? Ava's voice cracked, a mix of anger and fear. Daniel looked into their eyes, seeing his own pain reflected back. The struggle wasn't just theirs. It was a war within every heartbeat, every whispered doubt. The room fell deathly silent as Daniel's phone buzzed again. This time the message was different, a video. His hands trembled as he pressed play. The screen showed Emma, tear-streaked, speaking with urgency. "Dad, there's something you need to see. It's not just betrayal anymore. It's bigger. And it's coming for all of us." Before he could respond, the power in the cabin flickered and went out, plunging them into darkness. Outside, the distant sound of footsteps grew closer, unseen but dangerously near. In the pitch-black silence, Daniel's fingers fumbled for the flashlight. When the beam finally cut through the darkness, Ava held out a worn journal she'd found hidden beneath the floorboards of the cabin. With trembling hands, Daniel flipped it open. The pages told a story none of them expected. Emma's sacrifices, the secret deals she made, not to betray them, but to protect them from a far greater threat lurking within their own company. Tears streamed down Emma's face as she confessed, her voice breaking. "I did what I had to keep you safe, even if it meant becoming the villain in your eyes." The weight of years of suspicion and anger crashed down, replaced by a flood of relief and sorrow. In that raw moment of truth, walls crumbled and healing began. Painful, but necessary. Daniel pulled Emma close, whispering through his tears, "You were our shield all along." Daniel's breath hitched as the weight of the journal's revelations crashed over him like a tidal wave. Years of pain, betrayal, and silence exploded inside, breaking through every wall he'd built around his heart. Ava's sobs filled the room, raw, unfiltered grief mixed with a desperate need for truth and connection. Mia's hands trembled, clutching at Daniel's arm as tears streaked down her face. Emma, once the source of so much pain, now stood bare and vulnerable, her own tears flowing freely as forgiveness and sorrow collided. In that moment, the family was laid bare, broken, bruised, but finally real. Just as the family grappled with their raw emotions, the cabin door creaked open. Everyone froze. In stepped Lucas, Daniel's former rival in business, and someone they never imagined would stand by them. His eyes were steady, filled with determination rather than hostility. "I know what you're up against," Lucas said quietly. "And I'm here to help. Not because of old grudges, but because some things are bigger than rivalry." His unexpected arrival shifted the energy in the room. For the first time in weeks, hope flickered, not just from within the family, but from a new, powerful ally ready to fight alongside them. Lucas stepped forward, pulling a small, worn USB drive from his jacket pocket. "I found this during my own investigation," he said, voice low but urgent. Daniel plugged it into the laptop. The screen flickered to life, revealing a video. Emma, months ago, confessing everything in a quiet, desperate moment. "I'm not your enemy," Emma said, eyes filled with tears. "I was forced to make impossible choices to protect the company. And you. If this falls into the wrong hands, we all lose everything." The room was silent, the confession hitting harder than any argument or accusation. This was the truth they needed. Not twisted rumors or half-truths, but a raw, unfiltered revelation from the heart. Daniel's gaze met Emma's, the unspoken bond of trust and pain finally cemented. The room was heavy with silence after the confession played. Daniel's knees buckled, and he sank slowly onto the floor, his body shaking with exhaustion and grief. Tears streamed down Ava's cheeks as she clung to her father, her sobs breaking the fragile calm. Mia buried her face in her hands, trembling with the storm of emotions raging inside her. Even Emma, strong for so long, finally let go, her shoulders trembling, silent tears tracing lines down her face. It was a collapse not of defeat, but of release. The raw, devastating surrender to all they had endured and the uncertain path ahead. Months later, sunlight poured through the windows of the company's new headquarters, a symbol of rebirth and resilience. Ava and Mia, now confident and poised, stood side by side as CEOs of the most powerful female-led company in the world. Daniel watched them with quiet pride, the pain of the past softened by the victories of today. Emma stood nearby, her smile genuine, the scars of betrayal transformed into bonds stronger than ever. Their journey had been filled with heartbreak, sacrifice, and unthinkable challenges. But together, they had forged something unbreakable. In the midst of success, they never forgot the struggles that shaped them, a constant reminder that even in the darkest moments, hope and love could light the way forward. Daniel's voice broke softly as he whispered to himself, "They are the future, and I will always be their hero." Daniel stood at the edge of the storm, not just outside, but inside himself. After years of pain, betrayal, and sacrifice, he knew this was the moment to reclaim what was lost. With every step toward Emma and the girls, the walls of doubt began to crumble. This wasn't just about business or survival anymore, it was about redemption. He reached out, pulling them into a tight embrace, the kind that spoke louder than words, of forgiveness, of rescue from the past's shadows, and of a family reunited stronger than ever before. Tears mingled with smiles as old wounds began to heal in the warmth of newfound trust. In that fragile, powerful moment, Daniel realized that sometimes greatest victories come not from winning battles, but from saving the ones you love. The morning light found Daniel in the quiet of his study, a calm replacing the storm that once consumed him. Life had shifted, pain softened into lessons, and wounds began to fade into scars that told stories of survival. Emma and the girls had grown into more than just family. They were partners, friends, and the strongest allies he could ever ask. For some bridges they once feared were beyond repair, and Daniel accepted that with grace. But others, built on truth and forgiveness, stood stronger than ever, proof that healing wasn't about forgetting, but about choosing what to carry forward. Sometimes the strongest heroes aren't the ones who never fall. They're the ones who rise after every fall, who choose love over hate, and who build bridges where others see only walls. True power lies in forgiveness, resilience, and the courage to rewrite your story, no matter how dark the past.